Hi, it's Professor Chu, and well, I think by now everyone has gotten the basic sense of how this course works, about the homework assignments, what to do for them, and keep up the good work. I am figuring out still the times and dates for the midterm, but I'm hoping to be able to give you a choice of any of those 4 times and dates. And if anyone has conflicts because of things like athletic events at your, you're participating in team sports, I know a lot of you have been in touch with me, so I'll be in touch with you. What I wanted to talk about this week is lessons 5 and 6. The reality is that lessons 5 and 6 don't offer any new grammatical concepts, as you can see from looking at lesson 5 and lesson 6. They basically offer you some more vocabulary to go over and to learn, of course, and as usual, some explanations. This chapter 5 starts with the famous phrase "Gnothi Sauton," which is, as it says here, said by Thales, 6th century BC philosopher, quoted by Diogenes Laertius in the 3rd century BC, CE, excuse me, or AD. CE means the Common Era, different way of saying AD. Anyways, that's a famous phrase from Greek philosophy. And the reason they gave it to you is because they have words in this vocabulary for this chapter like know, which means mind or mental activity, as in paranoia. So it's kind of an unusual way to break down that word. And also in the word here, gno or gnos, a base that has 2 forms, it means know. As in loga gnosia, that would mean something like know, the condition of knowing through words. Notice again that some of these words for this lesson have more than one form. That acous and acous, which both refer to hearing, use either an OU or a U. The OU is from the original Greek word, which is akouein, but the O falls out. And then we also notice this E is part of the base for sente, a word meaning pierce. We've often seen it, for instance, in the word amniocentesis. Chroma, chroma, chromat, these are all forms of the word for color, and edema, edemat, meaning a swelling. And then this S or not can occur with nos. There's a lot of words that start with PH on this vocabulary, so they are difficult. I'm not going to tell you that they're difficult. It can be interesting trying to keep them differentiated from each other. So I have I put together a sheet for you that addresses this somewhat. So, but do be careful. Notice that there are 2 words that mean to speak. One is fa and one is fras. And there's also a word fog that means to swallow or eat. One way you can think about memorizing fog, meaning swallow or eat, is that if any of you eat faye, F-A-G-E, yogurt, Greek yogurt, the word fag actually does mean to eat in modern Greek. And so if you eat that yogurt called faye, that's how I'm pronouncing it the Greek way. It's spelled F-A-G-E. That is where that name is from. And then there are a couple of forms that mean to enclose or obstruct, as you can see here. And then this form ox, you should note, can refer both to oxygen, but actually comes from a Greek word oxy, meaning rapid or quick. So sometimes it does have that meaning with the Y. The etymological notes talk a lot about some Greek mythology, which is interesting, but not entirely important for your understanding of medical terminology. So as always with these etymological notes, I recommend that you look them over, read them briskly, and mostly note the medical terms as you're reading them and say to yourself, how would I break those down? So that's a good way to get some extra practice in breaking down words. Moving on to lesson 6, it's the same thing. Starting you off with a nice Greek phrase, nipsan anomima, mi monon apsin, wash your sins, not only your face. This is an inscription, indeed, in Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. That literally would mean sacred wisdom in Greek. And it is a palindrome, so every word, every letter at the start is the same as a letter at the end, and they meet in the middle with this A. The reason they gave you that expression is because they give you one of the bases in this chapter lesson is palin or pali, meaning back or again. And Again, there are a couple of bases that have a couple different spellings. So there's a K or a C for this one, ankyl or ankyl, because Greek only has a K. That's K sound is represented by the letter kappa, but in English that's often or sometimes changed to a C. And then there are, again, a couple of terms that do have multiple forms, like skiz, skist, and schisis, as in schizophrenia. And there are forms that sometimes look a little bit alike, like for meaning bearing or carrying, and fost or foot meaning light. And then once again, the etymological notes, they mostly try to explain some other terms for you. Some of these terms do occur on the exercises, and sometimes I even use them on quizzes or midterms. So I do recommend that you take a look at them. And if you're not sure how to break some of them down, try them. You can always email me. That leads us to the next point, which is we should talk about the midterm a little bit. Yes. I've gotten a couple questions from people about, what you should do to study. Obviously, the first thing to tell you is that you need all the vocabulary that we've been learning for each of the lessons. All of that is going to be on the midterm, or could be in some form. That means all the bases, all the prefixes and suffixes up to lesson 8, actually, for our midterm. There is a midterm page, which you can check. Let me make sure that you are seeing what I want you to see. Yes, because, okay, so we are going to, the week before the midterm is week 6. We will get up to lesson 8. So what is on the midterm is listed here. It has 3 sections. One is matching, in which that's sort of like the first part of the quiz on, as I like to say, steroids. Instead of having 10 or 18 as we did this past week, bases and prefixes to match, you have 26. So there's a section on vocabulary that can be any of the bases, a section on prefixes and suffixes all thrown together, and then a section of 26 different medical terms to match with different medical definitions. That makes 78 points, 78 questions. Then there's a word analysis section in which you have to break down 30 words into their parts. That part you actually write out by hand. And as I said, I individually grade all of your exams. And then there is a definition section where I asked you to take 10 of the terms that you broke down. You can choose any ones that you want and provide a definition. And as I've mentioned to a couple of you who asked, the definitions that I'm looking for are the ones that you can figure out from knowing the roots, the bases, roots of the medical terms. If the official definition might be a little bit different, but this is obviously a dictionary-free, notes-free, textbook-free exam. So you should define things based on what you see. So bradyarrhythmia could be defined as a condition, ia, of being slow, brady, and lacking, the prefix, in rhythm. That would be perfectly great. For the midterm, the official definition is a heart rate of less than 60 beats per minute found in an adult. So, but this definition, you can see, I think, how it connects to the literal definition that you get. It's something about a slow rhythm. And we have to know that it refers to the heart rate. So also for this example, melanocytoma, that literally means a tumor, oma, with darkened melan, cells. That's full credit, even though the official definition is a rare pigmented benign tumor of the optic nerve. There is no indication that it means the optic nerve here, or what its color is. There is only an indication about the oma part. So when for this course, what you are asked to learn is how can you just identify the bases in the words. And then I always think it's helpful to go look up in the medical dictionary, see what something means, and then try to figure out, how do I get from this to this? If there is a term on the midterm that you know the actual definition for, and it's not exactly like the medical term, what you would get from looking at the bases, suffixes, and prefixes, you should use the official definition. I will note that when I'm grading it. I will be providing some study aids as we get closer to the midterm. They will include a big vocabulary list that has everything on it. as well as a PDF with all the quizzes. So you can review the quizzes before the midterm. Having said which, I also put a section here on our weekly Sakai page about preparing for the midterm. So I go over the format again. And I think that some of the hardest things to learn in some ways are the prefixes and suffixes, because sometimes they're kind of abstract and there's a lot of them. So this is the time, first of all, to make use of your textbook. There are appendixes at the back of the textbook that list all the bases or combining forms, all the prefixes, all the suffix forms and compound forms. Those appendixes do list everything from the entire book, so not just from the first lessons. So you should keep track of that. There will be some forms you haven't seen. I actually think that one thing you can do is to be as active as possible in studying this material, and you should keep your own list of suffixes and prefixes. Perhaps, make a file on your computer, use a Google Doc. I really do advocate the use of flashcards. It's a very old-fashioned system to get out these index cards and start writing the forms on the words on them. But even though I know you can do that on an app on your phone, you can do that. But I also think making it the good old-fashioned way is not a bad idea. I also really recommend actually writing the words out by hand and not just like typing a list on your computer, because I think that taking the time to write everything by hand just is a really good way to go over all these words. And there are, as you know, a lot of them. And yes, when I was learning Greek and Latin, this is something I did all the time, to learn thousands of vocabulary words, and still more to learn. Another suggestion is that when you're memorizing a suffix or a prefix, don't just memorize the prefix by itself, like ia, itis, osis. I mean, you can do that, but it's often even more helpful to memorize the prefix or suffix when it's attached to a word. So especially if the word is a kind of a common word, like pneumonia, malaria, insomnia, you've all heard those terms, or tendinitis, or bronchitis, or meningitis, tuberculosis with osis, glaucoma, tetanus, you've gotten your shots, allergy, that is actually the suffix, the Y, or again, some other suffixes and also some prefixes, words like diarrhea or hemorrhage, paranormal or paradox. So if you don't have to use a medical term, many of these prefixes and suffixes also occur in non-medical terms, and they're equally helpful to think about, like perimeter or diameter. So the measurement around a circle versus the measurement through a circle. Diarrhea, dysfunctional. Antibiotic, these are all words we should be familiar with. Catalyst, epilepsy, epidemic, and then of course, one way I've often found it helpful to think about the prefixes, hypo and hyper is, well, an underperforming thyroid and overperforming thyroid, or hyperactive. That said, one thing I wanted to draw your attention to, and I gave you a link for this here. So I use all these Google Docs, I know, for my handouts, and I do use some PDFs, but in the past, sometimes students haven't been able to see the PDFs that I've uploaded on Sakai. I think it might be because of the settings that one has set on one's web browser, but no matter. The Google Docs are actually a little more, I actually prefer to use them. They're more flexible and I can update them at will. There's something I forgot to add, because there is actually something else that I want to add to this. But this wonderful document is called Things That Look Alike. And this is going to be a document that I will update over the course of the semester as we move forward in the course. What I've done is I've tried to put together bases or prefixes and suffixes that look alike and are extremely easy to confuse, that have different meanings. Hopefully this will be helpful. If you don't find it helpful, just don't look at it. But it's also another way just to review some of the words. So for instance, we learned that the base bi means life, but there is also a prefix bi, which is from Latin, meaning two, twice of double, as in bisexual. Bicycle. The reason that there are often word elements that look very similar but have really different meanings, like by and by, or moving down here. Di can mean two or twice, but dia means through, across, apart. Dis means apart and away. That is because the prefixes and suffixes and bases that we're learning come from both Greek and Latin. And Greek and Latin have many grammatical similarities, but many, many more differences, and they have completely different vocabularies. So, for instance, this di that means twice or double is actually from Greek. Dia is from Greek, but dis is from Latin. Ante, meaning before or forward, is Latin. Anti, meaning against, is Greek. And so bi, meaning life, is Greek. Bi, meaning two, twice, or double, is from Latin. So, I mean, one way to maybe think about bi is that there is this expression that you might see on a prescription. This equals twice. It equals twice. It means twice. So in other words, if it says to take something, your medication, bis per diem, I think that's the phrase, bis per diem, that means to take it twice a day. Per is the prefix through, but we don't always say that. We're more likely to say a day, and diem is day in Latin. So, but I added a lot of other terms here, like we've learned this base blood, M, but there is a base in, I think, lesson 5, MA, which means vomit. And we've learned a base in, or inos, which means fiber or muscle, but there is a prefix that means in. This is from Latin. And then, of course, there's a suffix in, which can form the name of substances. So we also have the really fun combination here, my meaning muscle, myket meaning fungus, miel meaning bone marrow. So notice that is one base. Some of you have been breaking it up. It's one base. It's just because it has 2 syllables, it can still be one base. Mus or mios also means muscle, and these words are actually related in Greek. They're actually all part of the same word, but mux means mucus. So we also have the bases here. Frog with a G, and actually frox is another form of this base that does occur in words, so the textbook doesn't list it. If that comes up on the homework, you won't get marked off for it because you don't know it, or I might have left a note. I think I put a note about it on the homework. We'll see what happens. But anyways, also, if you have questions about how I grade your homework or quizzes, please write to me. I tried to discuss this in the handouts about the homework, but with 150 people in our course, all of you will have potentially different questions, so you should ask them to me. And then we've also seen poly, meaning great matter, for instance, and poly, meaning many or excessive. And then, of course, in the base from lesson 1, prot means first or primitive, like protozoa. Pro, though, means before or forward or in front of. That gives us actually the English, a prefix in English, like, to be, pro something or con something, so for something or against something. But there is also a prefix in Greek from another preposition, pros or pros, which means in place of. I mean, one of the main ways that we see this pros or pros is in the word prosthetic. So a limb, an artificial limb in place of a limb. Take a look at this, and I will be updating this as the course proceeds, but as we move further into the course and certainly start to also learn more Latin words, that starts in lesson 8, there will be more word bases that look like other bases. So another one I noted just to draw your attention to is para, which means alongside, and peri, which means around, and then there's also per, which means through. And then also these were some things that actually occurred on the quiz. Note that they're compound suffix forms. There are 2 that have this part tomi in it, and tomi does mean a surgical incision because it's from a Greek word that means to cut, tom. But when you put ek, the prefix meaning out of in front, it's a surgical excision. So it's a difference. Just wanted to highlight that, and that was on the quiz for this week. And then there's these 3 compound suffix forms, which are very similar in meaning, but a little bit different. Viragia and rea do both mean a profuse discharge, but one means a hemorrhage, which you can guess at because of this part of the word is in the word, our English word hemorrhage. And then rea meaning an excessive secretion. Well, that's because the base re also has the meaning of to secrete. So if there are words that have exactly some of the same meanings but slightly different variations, if they're on a quiz or test, I do give you the option. I try to indicate to you that they have these different meanings. And rhexis means a bursting of tissues or a rupture. Actually, these words in Greek are all etymologically related. They certainly all refer to some kind of outburst of something. Finally, I hope that you have all been able to take a look at by now of my, oh, get that over here for you. I hope that you have all been able to look at my homework review for lessons 1 and 2. I will also do that for lessons 3 and 4. It doesn't look like my document. Where is it? Oh, let's get that uploaded for you. I sometimes, this is probably make the small point too, that sometimes it is helpful to write things up by hand. It can make them a little bit easier to, well, to me, doing this is what I would be writing on a whiteboard if this was actually a class. So let me know if you have questions about that. I did try to write legibly so you could actually read it, but you know, sometimes it's just simpler to sit down with a pen and draw an arrow than to try to get my computer to do that, which I'm totally capable of doing. This last sheet I know is a bit of a mess, so if you have any trouble reading it, and I will work on making the shadow a little bit better next time, but this is my way of trying to go over homework and also giving you an idea of how you can break apart the words for the midterm, because you will be writing everything by hand. Once again, you don't need to put the connecting vowel here into parentheses. I just think it's helpful, and I will do it on your homework corrections because that way I like to show you that something is a connecting vowel. Whereas E at the end of this word, enterocystocele, it's actually not a suffix, it's an ending. It's an ending because it doesn't actually have a meaning, whereas suffixes always have meanings. Or this on here was actually an ending too. So keep up the very good work. I know there is a lot of material for this class, and that will continue to be the case for the rest of the semester. You are doing a good job, and get this back. You're doing a great job, and also I really do enjoy reading your forum posts. It is an important thing for me to feel like I'm getting to know you, even though it's an online class and haven't met any of you face to face. So I'm sorry I can't intercede with more comments. I'm very taken always to hear what you think about the Hippocratic Oath, because it does have some really surprising different aspects from the oath from the ancient version to the modern version. And also about medical websites, which once again, I think are something that we all turn to a lot. The forum for this week will actually be about your suggestions. I was hoping that we can all share ways that we have been memorizing different terms, sort of as a way to all start to think ahead to the midterm. So with that in mind, email me as always, and have a great week.